Thank you. Can you all hear me okay? Yeah? Okay, welcome. Thank you so much for having me. Thank you for being here to talk about burnout. Before we jump into everything, there's a quote that stuck with me for probably the last 3 or 4 weeks. And we'll circle back to this, but the quote is, "There are darknesses in life, and there are lights. You are one of the lights. You are one of the lights." So remember that. And just to get ourselves ready to take the information that's coming into us and just to kind of leave the stress, thank you. Anything we want to leave behind outside the door, we're going to do a quick reset. So I want you all to close your eyes, get comfortable in your seats, get disconnected from your phones. All right, so close your eyes, feet are planted on the ground, your hands are somewhere comfortable. Maybe they're on your lap, maybe they're by your sides, maybe they're on the table, but your eyes are closed and you're just starting to let go. And we're going to do some deep breaths, and I'll coach you through them. But before we do the deep breaths, I want you to see that light. And it's your light, so you get to decide what it looks like, what color it is, what it feels like. Is it warm? Is it hot? Is it cool? Is it prickly? Is it spicy? And every time you breathe in and out, that light starts to grow, contract, and move in your body, okay? So take a deep breath in through the nose for 4. And hold. And exhale for 4. That light's moving through. And breathe in through the nose for 4. Expanding that stomach. And holding for 4. And exhaling for 4. And when you feel ready, go ahead and come back to earth. Open your eyes. Yeah. So this is something you can do anytime life gets stressful. You have, 30 seconds, 60 seconds. I'm feeling anxious, like if I'm coming to speak to a bunch of people, it's something that I would do just to give myself a reset, lower my blood pressure, and start to bring down any anxiety and overwhelm that I might feel. So thanks for doing that. So outcomes for today, a few things. One is education. Knowledge is power. So the more we understand about burnout, the more enabled we are to take action personally, and the more we're able to support our community and friends and people we love. 2, practical tools for managing stress in your daily life. So we are going to go through a few exercises that are science-based, evidence-based that you all can practice here. You're going to practice them here with one another, and then you can take them into the real world as well. Feeling empowered, connected, and supported. So I'll tell you a little bit about my own personal story with burnout. Well, one of the things that showed up for me and shows up for many people that I talk about and work with on a daily basis is this feeling of isolation. Feeling really alone, like we're crazy or there's something might be wrong with us for how stressed we feel and unable to cope with what's going on in our lives. And so what I want for everyone here is to understand you're not alone, you have each other in the room and out of the room, and we got each other's back. So I'll tell you a little bit more about myself, but first you all are going to meet each other. So turn around to your neighbor. Maybe you know them, maybe you don't. Take 30 seconds, say hello, say your name, and tell each other why you're here. Yes, get friendly. And whoever's in the chat, say hello in the chat. Say hi. All right, we're good? We're better? Good. All right. I'll tell you a little bit about me. So I'm Sarah, you heard I was a coach. Those are my two kids, that's Mia and Mari up there. They'll be 8 and 10 next week, actually, and the week after. I'm a cycling instructor. I'm very passionate about teaching and also just being very physical. So that's me on my bike. That is actually on the bottom, a bunch of instructors that I work with. They're part of my community and close friends. I'm an extrovert, and they support me, and I love being with them. That's my house, or was my house. I live in California. We'll get to why that's not my house anymore in a little bit. And that's been several years ago. So Courtney mentioned I was a leader before. So I worked in tech for over 15 years as a leader. And that was actually my first panel I moderated at South by Southwest in Austin. So, and I'm curious, just shout out words that come to mind when you see these photos and drop them in the chat as well. Athletic.
Family
oriented. Fun. Happy.
Outgoing.
Okay. Yeah. Yes. And I am all those things. All those things today. That's how things looked. So here's the truth. Here's the real story. Things were great on the outside, inside I was falling apart. This is the truth. That's me. I'm the oldest of 3 siblings. That's my brother Greg, my sister Dana. I grew up in the woods in Bethany, Connecticut. Yeah, the woods of Bethany, Connecticut. I was a super anxious kid. I was deeply insecure. I was also super creative. I had a lot of feelings, really big feelings. But at home, I had to be perfect. I had to hold it in. I couldn't cry. I had to fall in line. Home was volatile. So what I did was I achieved a lot. I got great at a lot of different things because I wanted approval. I wanted to be good enough. And I wanted to be good enough to be loved. That top corner is me as a performer. So as early as I can remember, I was singing and dancing and performing. I was a very talented performer. And I basically would coerce anyone I could into watching me perform, whether it was outside in full costume or it was in front of my fireplace in tap shoes. I loved it more than anything in the world. And I actually had a lot of success as a paid performer doing, musicals and opera and theater. But my career was discouraged. I was discouraged from pursuing that as a career. And I was convinced I wouldn't make it. That was just the message I internalized. And so I quit. I picked up. I moved to New York City to pursue the right path. And I did. I worked my butt off. I worked my way all the way up from a customer service rep who couldn't afford my rent. Nearly evicted a couple of times, and eventually I became an executive, and I had everything. I had, the home, the enviable career, the husband, the kids, the money, that house that you saw in California, all of it. I had it all on paper. But inside I was falling apart, like I said. So my first burnout cycle was when I was at a company, and my entire organization was going through a massive change. My entire leadership team left, including my boss, and I was promoted into the new executive team. And so I had to lead through all the change and the stress and the chaos. It was a very stressful time. And at the same time, my brother Greg that you saw, he died suddenly. Yeah. He died suddenly. And my boss was the CEO of the company. He was super supportive. He said, you know, do what you need to do. We're here for you. Go mourn your brother, be with your family. But honestly, and this is very embarrassing to say out loud to all of you, but I wasn't thinking about my brother. I was thinking about work. Work was a priority. Work was how I derived my value and my identity. And all I could think about was how I was selfish for taking time off, or what my team would be thinking about me, how they'd be judging me for leaving, how selfish I was. And I was thinking about losing my job. So I took a couple weeks off and I went right back to grinding it. And I repeated the same burnout cycle 2 different times at 2 other companies. Except for now, I had those 2 hits. I had 2 under 2. I had horrible anxiety, my hair was falling out, I had chronic stomach issues, IBS, I was in the hospital with dehydration. So, I had a conversation with a mentor. I told her how I was lost, and she said, Sarah, why aren't you thinking about coaching as a career? And I had never even thought about it, it had never crossed my mind. But I knew I had to do something different because I was at rock bottom. So for the first time in basically a decade, I followed my heart, I followed my intuition. I applied, I got into the same coaching program that she graduated from. And that's the program that completely transformed my life. And I started to feel feelings that I had, kept inside for years. I developed healthier habits, started exercising. I had courage to speak up. I started acknowledging holes in my startup co-founder relationship, and I started, more importantly, acknowledging holes in my marriage. And I had a clear sense of what I valued, what I wanted, and what I didn't. And all this newfound, self-awareness and focus on myself, it caused chaos. It caused chaos, total chaos. My husband was understandably angry and frustrated and afraid of the changes that were happening, and he would say things like, why can't you be the way you used to be? Why can't you go back to the old Sarah? Why can't you have a normal job like everybody else? So fast forward to a very messy divorce during COVID, right? I lost my house, my money, my family structure as I knew it. And I landed with a complex PTSD diagnosis and a clinical anxiety diagnosis to boot. But this was my 4th and final burnout cycle. And it was the cycle that never fully was, because this time I had support, and I had resources, and I had a sense of self. So now today, things are much better. Much healthier, I'm much happier, my kids are thriving, my co-parenting relationship is solid. Is life without stress? Absolutely not. Life is stressful. But am I managing a successful business now? Yes. Are my kids happier and healthier? Yes. Am I able to manage it all? Yes. And so I tell you this long story because burnout is really a symptom. It's a symptom of something much deeper, a lot of much deeper things. But for me, and for many others that I talk to, it's a symptom of a deeply held belief that we are not good enough. We are not good enough as we are. And so my hope in walking you through all this today is that you'll walk away with a little bit more sense of that light. Remember, you have that light, and you are the light. And you can avoid the decade of burnout that I experienced. So, with that, what is burnout? Burnout is a state of prolonged chronic stress resulting from an imbalance between our demands and our resources. Okay? And there are three ways that it shows up and manifests. There are 3 big categories. Okay, and we'll talk about what they look like, what they sound like, what they feel like in the real world. So number 1, loss of self-confidence, self-confidence, apathy, and cynicism. So what this might present as and look like will be maybe rereading emails 15 times before sending them. It may be thinking you're going to get fired and worrying about your performance, even though your performance reviews are fine and you've gotten good feedback. Okay. Apathy, this is just caring less, right? So caring less about things you used to care about. And it doesn't have to be outward, right? It could be the students and the type of work you're doing. It can also be caring less about activities outside of work, caring less about your children. And cynicism, it is what it sounds like. We're just a little bit more cynical. You might say things like, what is the point of this work I'm doing? What is the point of doing X? These are things that might run through your mind. Then there's physical, mental, and emotional exhaustion. So yes, this is feeling tired, being exhausted all the time. This can also mean brain fog, right? You're struggling to remember things. You don't have the clarity of articulating certain ideas out loud. This can be memory issues, okay? And also in daily life, this might be, I've worked so hard all day that I just don't have the energy to go get my Amazon package. Or like my dishes are sitting in the sink for 3 days and I just can't bring myself to do them. Or someone in your family or a friend of yours is texting you and you can't even bear to look at it and respond. Even they're just asking, how are you? Right? It's degraded capacity, emotional capacity. Then there's reduced motivation and productivity. So very simply put, things that would take you maybe 30 minutes are taking exponentially longer. 3 hours, 3 days. Their projects maybe don't even get done. And again, this could be at home, in your personal life. This could also be at work. So, a very big misconception is that, like I said earlier, our stress must be about us, right? And there must be something wrong with me if I can't handle this load, this workload, or what's going on in my life. But the reality is, 1 in 4 people, 25% of you in this room have experienced symptoms of burnout. And it disproportionately affects women, BIPOC, people from the LGBTQ community, okay? So the reality is 25% of us are talking about it, or maybe some of us are suffering in silence or don't even understand what's happening to us. So you are not alone. You are definitely not alone. And I was one of those people who, 1, didn't understand what was happening to me at the time. And 2, when I had an idea of what was understanding, I internalized it and thought, I just need to work harder. There must be something wrong with me. I don't want to talk about it. The causes. Another big misconception about burnout is that it's career demands placed on us, career stress. Work is a big part of it, sure, but it's way more multifaceted and intersectional and complex than just work stress. So here are all the causes. Societal, structural. What does this mean? Discrimination, oppression, inequality, war, the news cycle, big global issues. Work is situational, right? So this is work stress. Maybe this is, there's a big leadership change happening or reorgs happening at work. Maybe we're under-resourced at work. We don't have enough staff. Maybe you have a leader you work with that you don't trust. There's all sorts of reasons at work that contribute to burnout. Situational. We all have really unique circumstances. Maybe you are going through a divorce, or are a single parent, or are caretaking someone like a parent, or someone's sick at home. These are all things that add to our stress. Cultural influence. So, like I mentioned, I grew up in a family where I had to be perfect, things had to look a certain way on the outside, and so what ended up happening was I internalized a lot and hid a lot. That leads to burnout. Or maybe you are someone who grew up in a family where we don't talk about feelings, there's stigma around mental health, and so you keep those things to yourself and don't get help. Or maybe you grew up in a community-based culture where the good of the group and the family is more important than the individual. These are all factors that contribute to burnout. Self-worth and identity. So this is if we don't know who we are or we're ashamed of who we are, this contributes to burnout. And when we're hard on ourselves for what we're not doing, we're critical of ourselves and have low self-confidence, this contributes to burnout. There was a lot of negative self-talk in my head for many, many years. And then finally, lack of resources and support. And so this is, again, sometimes we don't know, we don't know. So this is lack of education, and maybe this is lack of understanding in terms of what we can do to help ourselves and how to access it. So, you're all gonna take a minute and you are going to write down what one or two resonate, if at all, for you. And then you're gonna talk about it with your neighbor, okay? And then in the chat, we'd love for a couple people to drop one or two that resonate for Caitlin to read. So go ahead, take a minute. Yes, there you go. You can see them now, sorry. They're on display.
Everything you just said, so you can.
Oh. Happy sales. All right, we got about 10 more seconds. All right. So, Caitlin, what do we have in the chat? Anything you can share?
Yes, we have quite a few self-worth and identity, resources and support, self-worth and identity, work and situational.
Cool. All right. I invite someone to raise their hand to tell me one of theirs, one or two of theirs, why. Yes.
It's gonna make me give my substance today. Also, don't laugh at me if you're like, oh, she's hobbling around. I hurt my back last week, so walking is really good for me. I appreciate you.
So for me, it used to be work and situational, but over time, I'd say that situation's gotten better. And now it's more of a self-worth and identity, and just kind of like at our table as a whole, we were talking about how it's a mixture of them and it ebbs and flows kind of depending on where you are in life.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you. Yeah, thanks for sharing that. It absolutely ebbs and flows. If you find yourself saying, oh, I think all of them do, that's totally reasonable. For me, you know, it's the same. And for many of us, it's all of these little slivers of all of these. And then depending on where you are in your life, it may be one or two. Like I mentioned, you know, in my divorce process, it was literally the perfect storm of things happening at once, right? So it's like I had the self-worth and identity, but I had all these other things going on too. So thank you for sharing.
We had another one over here.
Yeah.
Okay, so work and situational, we talked about stuff constantly being put upon us. But I would also say the self-worth and identity, because imposter syndrome is real.
Yes, it is. Thank you for sharing that. Yes, it is real. Yeah, it's amazing to me because it's like truly no matter how successful or amazing a person is, like those thoughts still perpetuate. And there's a number of things we can do to make those voices in our head sound less intense and be more manageable. Like even like, you know, me being in front of you right now, I'm, you know, like 80% comfortable, right? The imposter syndrome or lack of self-confidence that creates anxiety and stress, it doesn't always go away, and that's just part of life, but there are tools to make them much more manageable, right? So what you want to watch out for is when these things start to take over and interfere with your ability to enjoy life and do work.
And I've got one more right here.
Yeah, please.
And it's societal structural, my oldest just started kindergarten, and I didn't realize how much the school calendars and the university calendars do not align at all, so. Every month, it's like a constant battle with my wife, it's like, oh, who's taking this day, who's gonna work from home, you know, who's gonna juggle, it's like. Can't we all figure something out to have a common calendar, like?
Yes. Yeah, thank you for saying that.
I'll sit on the board of that with you. Maybe we can figure it out before my kids hit
Yes.
kindergarten.
Absolutely, not designed for parents, and it's also extremely, yeah, busy on top of it all. So thank you everyone for sharing. So a little bit about the impact. So I like to think of these in terms of mental, physical, relational, and short versus long term. So, you know, the best example I could give is, I have a client who previously had struggled with clinical depression and anxiety. But it was essentially dormant, you know, for many years. It was completely manageable. She had a great job. She had, you know, she was a single parent to 2 kids. Her family life was great, but what happened was she ended up getting promoted into a new role, which she was well equipped to handle and was amazing at. But because she was, you know, so hard on herself, she essentially became burned out through that new role, and sort of the pressure she was putting on herself as a norm. And so what happened for her was she went from, you know, like the little paper cuts, if you will, of feeling not so confident, feeling stressed in her daily work, to moving to a full blown burnout, where she took medical leave because she had crossed back into clinical anxiety and depression, as well as she started seeing chronic physical health issues resurface, thyroid issues that were previously under control. So, and now she's doing great, and she's going through the recovery process and all. But this is all to say, there are things in our daily lives that feel manageable. Maybe at the time they seem manageable to us, but they accumulate and they compound over time. And the same was true for me, you know. I used to say things to myself like, well, who cares how I feel as long as everything looks okay on the surface? I mean, these were literal thoughts that came to my mind. Or I would say, I'll worry about it in 10 years from now, right? Not understanding how things were compounding and growing, becoming larger. Quickly on the relational piece, this may show up as, you know, irritability with people you love, your colleagues, your kids. I mean, I was, you know, snip at my kids, very impatient and irritable when, and even just driving, frankly, you know, like little things would bother me, set me off, regular interactions of getting coffee or something. But you know, over time, those degrade the quality of our relationship. So I just, you know, make a point of saying, it's not just about us, it's also the effect and impact we have on those we love, those we care about, and those we lead as well. Okay, so here are 3 phases of burnout. I want to touch upon manageable stress first, just to re-emphasize this point that stress is going to happen. Life is stressful. We can't avoid stress. In fact, stress is actually a good thing. Stress tells us when there's a problem to be solved. Stress is calling attention to things we need to attend to in our lives. And stress actually does drive us to perform. The problem is when it becomes, again, unmanageable into burnout and takes over, right? Manageable stress, we have the tools and resources to deal with them. They're short in duration. They're not as intense. And they often have a concrete time frame, right? Situational, it ends, we move on. Okay? Burnout is different. And here are the 3 phases. And I like to describe these in terms of energy because they have very different feels. So phase one, you're anxious, like hyper productive, almost overproductive. Like you might have like an anxious, nervous energy, like you want to control things, doing a lot of work, right? You're staying busy. You also might be questioning, like, what am I doing this for? So you're overworking, but you're in the back of your mind, you might say things like, well, why am I actually doing this? And like, where is this taking me? So you're becoming a little bit more inquisitive, but it's an anxious kind of like pent up energy. You're actually productive, but it doesn't feel good. Second phase, yeah, is very different energy. I like to describe this as, it's like sad and slow, right? It's tired, exhausted, it's a low energy, but it's also that feeling of checking out, right? Caring less about the work you're doing, feeling stuck. You know, you may at this point think like I can't do anything about this. That is something very common. Like, I don't have control over this. I have to accept things as they are. And third, this is like your rock bottom crisis point, but it's not so dark, right? It may be a crisis point, but it's also empowered to action. So for me, you know, it was, like I mentioned, like I had a complete meltdown. For some people, it's they quit their job because they can't handle the stress. For some, you know, it's landing in a hospital. So there is a rock bottom here, but it's the moment you take action and accept that there's something you want to do about it, or can do about it. So, guess what? You don't have to share this, but we're going to reflect on where we think we are today in any of these 4 places, whether it's manageable stress or 1 through 3. So take 2 minutes to reflect on where you think you are, write it down. And you don't have to share it, this is just for you. This is also going to be a tool that you can use in your daily life, right? Because the whole point is we want to avoid getting there if we're not there. So you have a couple minutes. Also, maybe take note of why you think you're there and what might have led you there. And if you want to, by all means, please. Go for it. All right. We have an idea. I also do want to invite you, if you do have questions, we'll have questions at the end, but please, if you have them now, happy to answer them now. Yeah, absolutely.
So one of the questions I had was, you know, just how do you move from your crisis point to call to action, right? You know, it seems like they're polar opposites of you hit rock bottom and then being able to try to get back up. So, if you have any ideas on that?
Yeah, that's a really good question. The question is, if I'm at such rock bottom, how do I actually get empowered to do something about it? That is a great question. And the answer I have, I don't know if you like the answer I have. It's just, all I can say is when the pain becomes so great, the suffering becomes so great, that's the moment. That's the moment. The pain has just been so great. And, you know, I've seen it in my own life and I've seen it with all my clients, regardless of whether or not they're burned out, when they're at some sort of crisis, pivotal moment, it's like you have the choice, right? It's like, do I stay here in this horrible state? Or even though I'm a little scared about the future and making a change, that seems less scary than where I am now. So it's almost like the fear of the future is still better than the pain you're experiencing in the moment. yeah, so it's not, I mean, it's not a great answer, it's just, you have that choice and it kind of just happens. But I will answer this a little bit later with, in a couple other slides. Part of it is support, and so that's why the point of this is for us to talk about it, become more aware of it, and destigmatize it, so it's not this scary thing we can't talk about. And so many of us have unmanageable stress, you know, I mean, even today, I go through periods where I'm like, oh my God, I'm about to be back where I was. And so it's about talking about it and connecting with others that can support us as well. Thank you, good question. All right. Strategies, more strategies now, all right? So, at a 10,000 foot view, this is how we prevent and recover from burnout, okay? All these big components right there. So number one, systems, we touched upon this a little bit. So these are things like policies, processes, and they don't have to be at the governmental level, although they certainly can be, and should be. We're talking about at the organizational level, at the team level, at the individual level, at the family level. What are things we can do in our family system that might support less stress, okay? There's well-being essentials. So we talk about what are our sort of minimum viable things we need just to survive on a daily basis. How are we making sure we're getting them? I'm talking the basics. Water, hydrating, food, exercise, connecting with others, right? Very basics. And also, what coping tools do we have when SHIT hits the fan? Okay, like what are the things, what are the resources, sorry, I don't know if I can swear. Yeah, you know, like what are those tools, those healthy coping mechanisms we could go to when things are, you know, getting bad? Like our tool belt. Self-knowledge and compassion. So the more we understand ourselves and feel that we can share ourselves, you know, express ourselves as we are, and be compassionate to ourselves without that self-criticism, that voice I was mentioning, the better we can stave off burnout. Connection, so this is community. Community, romantic love, family, friends, peers, people you care about. Isolation is a really big part of burnout, and it's a really big contributor to depression. Limits and needs, so identifying what it is you actually need. I can't tell you what a problem this is. You know, like I'm someone who is so focused on prioritizing and pleasing everyone else around me, that I really had no idea what I wanted or what I needed, and frankly, I didn't even want to talk about it. So there's your needs, and then there are the limits, right? So these are kind of, you know, like boundaries. What are the limits that I can communicate to my team, my friends, those around me, that enable us to work better and lovingly with one another? And then there's meaning. So, you know, what are you excited about? What are you passionate about? What do you find meaning in? Maybe it's work, maybe it's something else. Is it volunteering? Is there a cause? So at a very 10,000 foot view, these are all the things that go into both prevention and recovery. But we'll talk about some small aspects of these that you can integrate into your daily life. Okay, so number one, we have to acknowledge you're human and that life and work are messy full-time jobs. And this is just how it is. I'm seeing some nods, it's true, right? Life is filled with ups and downs. We aren't actually going to change that, right? That's just part of life. Part of burnout stems from us criticizing ourselves for how we're unable to manage, or for not executing life and work perfectly, right? So, we're gonna change that. So what I want you to do, we all have that self-critical voice. You all know what I'm talking about, right? That thing that says like, I should be doing this, I should be working harder, why can't I handle this, I'm weak, whatever it is. I want you to write it down There's two parts to this. So take a minute to write down what that thing you say to yourself is in these times of extreme stress when you're being hard on yourself. It might be, I'm not good enough. It might be, I need to do better. It might be, I need to push through. Whatever that thing is, you say to yourself, write it down. And we want to write it down because we want to get it out of our heads, because externalizing it is part of how you're in stress. All right. Now that we got it, there's a part two. What is a more neutral, compassionate thing we can say to ourselves instead? So this might be, and also, let me add one thing. It can't be about, I should be working harder to fix this. Or like, I need to achieve more. It has to not be about working more, working harder, working more. What is something more compassionate you might say? Let me give you some examples. It might be, I'm doing the best with what I have. That's a good one, right? I'm doing the best with what I have, or I did my best today, or this sucks, and it is what it is. Or today's just a day, there will be tomorrow. Whatever it is for you, just something like slightly more compassionate. It doesn't have to be puppy dogs and unicorns and ice cream. It can be, just slightly better. And this is the thing we're gonna practice saying to ourselves and remembering when these times come up. Okay, so go ahead and write it down. You have about a minute. Everyone's done? All right. Who wants to share what they're saying to themselves now? I invite someone, yes.
I wake up each morning and
I've gone through the whole gamut. And so I wake up every morning and I tell myself, I am blessed. This is going to be a good day. And I put my feet on the floor and tell the devil, I got you.
I got you.
So
There you go. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, blessed. Anyone else? Yeah. How about the chat? Anyone else? Yes, great.
I struggle with comparison a lot, so something I want to say instead is I am my own person.
Oh, I love it. That's great, yes. Yeah. These are great, thank you. I am my own person, I love that. Anyone else? No? How about chat?
In the chat, we have, I can do anything temporary.
Oh, I love that too. Yeah, these are great. I can do anything temporarily. That's something very important to remember, that this is temporary, When we're going through it, it feels permanent, like the day's never gonna change or it's never gonna end.
Hello. Sorry, I didn't cut you off. I'm over here.
Oh, sorry.
I tell myself you can do hard things, even if it's just for a minute, and I also feel like I do that a lot. I go to yoga on Thursdays with Sarah, and she's awesome. So if you don't go to yoga, you should go to yoga, but you can do hard things, just, just not breathe, or I don't know what you say, Sarah, but you can do hard things, even if it's just for a minute.
Yes, yeah, that's great. You can do hard things. It's true. You can all do hard things. We can all do hard things. That's beautiful. Okay. So number 2 is centering our well-being is foundational to our success. And by success, I don't mean career success. That's certainly part of it. What I mean is just having a life that we like or love and find meaning in. So I want you to write down your top 3 priorities right now. Your top 3 priorities. It might be career. It might be your kids. It might be travel. It might be keeping a roof over your head. Whatever those top 3 priorities are for you, I want you to write them down now. Take 30 seconds. Okay, so now that you have your top 3 priorities, I want you to raise your hand if you were number 1 on the list. Okay. Great, we have, okay. Keep your hands up, actually, there's a part 2. How many of you with your hands up have your health and well-being as number 1? Yes? Great, keep it up. Good, that's great. So stay where you are, that's the work, stay centered on it. For everyone else, you're not in trouble. You're not in trouble. The question to ask yourself and reflect on is, what small things would need to happen, or what shifts may need to happen to even move myself up a place on that list? What would need to happen in order to move you up that list? And so you don't have to answer that, but that's the reflection. What I thought was that work was my priority. What I thought was that my kids were my priority. But what I realized when I was completely falling apart and in the hospital was that none of these things would happen if I was dead, frankly. So. And you're leading the way if you are health centered and raising your hand. Okay, so what is one thing you can take away or add to simplify your life? Okay, for some of us, adding another thing is overwhelming. We already have so much on our plates. To think about adding something is like, oh my God, please don't ask me to do that. So you may want to take something away, one small thing. Others of us may want to add something because it's more restorative. Okay, it might rejuvenate us. So we're going to think about what's one thing we can subtract or add that will give us a little bit more life and stress reduction. Okay, and it's just something small over, say, the next week or 2. And for some help, here's some ideas. So these are my pretty little branded boxes, but really what they are the pillars of mental health and well-being, okay? So just to give you some hints or ideas of what they might be, you can take something from core. Core is your foundation, right? So this is like financial wellness, right? Financial wellness. This is doing a budget. This is, again, like basics of well-being. Heart. This is your feelings, right? Your emotions. This might be love related. This might be family related. Okay? It might be exercising self-compassion in a way to yourself. Your mind. What is something you want to learn or try that's new, that's stimulating your brain? Or maybe you have self-critical thoughts you're telling yourself. Okay? Maybe you need a rest. Your brain needs a rest and you need to, cut something off your list. Then there's body, right? This is self-explanatory, but this is, movement. This might be meditation. It might be an exercise, a walk. And then there's soul, right? So this might be, again, meditation, time in nature, schedule time by yourself, volunteering, church. Okay? Yeah. So one small thing, you're going to take a minute right now to write it down, and then you're going to share with your neighbor. And we want to hear about it in the chat. Big, small, really small. It might be like a break. Like one time during the week. Maybe you work through lunch, I don't know. One teeny tiny thing. And everybody share. Okay. We good? We have one thing. All right. Invitation time. Who's ready to share the one thing they're adding or subtracting in the next week or two? Oh, yes. Oh, Alex is up.
Howdy.
Howdy.
So I just added exercise.
Tell us more. What kind? When?
Well, so my table mates were just telling me that there's, yoga available here direct. And so I may try that.
Yes.
Or but just getting out, walking some more. I'm probably not gonna like go on like a bodybuilding spree or anything
No.
next week.
Small.
Yeah, small.
Cool. So like one walk planned or maybe a yoga class the next couple weeks?
I'll probably go with the walk.
With a walk? Okay.
Well, and I'll do a shameless plug. Remember, you all have access to wellness release time, which is 30 minutes, 3 times a week to engage in physical activity. So if you're thinking about adding something, maybe you add in 30 minutes to your work schedule where you can go walk around the inside or the outside of your building, depending on the temperature in Texas.
Ooh, yes, I love it. Anyone in the chat have something, Caitlin?
Yes, a couple people are saying they want to volunteer more, time in nature, focusing on core and heart, and having more social connections. Also, if you have any suggestions for those who are struggling to choose one or two, and they want to work on everything and it's overwhelming.
Oh, that is a perfect, I love the question. Yes, the advice is as follows. Start. We all want to do too much at one time. The way things become habits and sustainable over time is when we start with the smallest building block we possibly can. So my advice to them would be, of the things that they listed, choose the one that feels the most achievable, like the easiest to try. You might try pairing it with something you already do really easily. Like for example, if you wanted to try a meditation, I'm not saying you do, but if you wanted to try a meditation, you might pair it with something you do on autopilot, like brushing your teeth in the morning. So pair it with something you already do, and or try something really, really achievable that you almost have no chance of not trying. And just ask yourself, what of these are most important and why? Choose one. Always choose one. Make it really small. That's a great question. Thank you. Anyone else want to share? Yes.
Make my way over there. Speed walking. It is a class at A&M, by the way, I believe.
Good morning.
Morning.
I would say scheduled solitude as a mom of 4, wife and grandma. I feel like I'm your mom, I think. And I think I just need to be more proactive in scheduling that alone time and just to kind of decompress and think, period.
Yes, I love that. Yeah, because all you hear is like, right? Like buzzing, constantly buzzing. Yeah, that's great. Yeah, and you can start, just a reminder, start small, It doesn't have to be perfect. It doesn't have to be 30 minutes, 45 minutes. It doesn't have to be like running a marathon or, even making it through a full yoga class. It could be my first attempt, my little thing I'm gonna do is I'm gonna show up to class. Or it's gonna be, I'm gonna carve out 8 minutes, 60 seconds. So start small and you can build from there. These are great. These are great. And if you want to take a screenshot or, I'm happy to talk about any and all these things later if you want more support and have questions. And last but never least, probably the most important, reach out and ask for help because support is strength, not weakness, not weakness. And regardless of how much time you have, how much money you make, there are an abundance of resources that you can access. And actually, Courtney, you're going to tell us a little bit more about that. So Courtney's going to tell you about some free resources you all have access to and your household has access to. But first, I want to mention there are things like coaches, therapists, support groups, peer groups, groups at church, friends. This could literally be just you sharing what's going on in your life with your family and friends. But there's an abundance of free resources, so take it away.
Yeah, so our program has so many. One that I want to highlight, especially our peer-led groups. So those are our organic grassroots organizations where people come together over like-minded things like a book club. But it's a great way to find a sense of community here on campus and get some support. Sarah Caliendo actually oversees all of those, so she'll be a really great point of contact if that's something that you're interested in joining, or maybe you want to start your own interest group. Another one I want to point out is our employee assistance program, so our EAP program with ComPsych. They have a whole host of offerings. And most people think of employee assistance program and then think of counseling services, which they have. And oh, by the way, you can see a licensed professional for at completely no cost for 5 sessions on a specific topic. So if you see them for 5 sessions about work stress, then a couple months later you have life stress, you can see them again for 5 additional sessions. And all of that is not time that you have to submit leave for. It's all included in what we have as a benefit to employees here at Texas A&M. And you can do that as much as you need to. They also have financial services, legal services. They have life consultants, so individuals who can help you find the best daycare for your children, or if you're caring for an elder parent, they can help you find facilities and support for that that are local to you and meet whatever criteria you have, such as your budget or a specific radius of where you're looking at. And they do that nationally, and they also serve globally. So that can be really great for you all, just to have some additional support. We have many other things, but if you have questions on them, I want you to come talk to us. Of course, you can always check out our website or our app, but we love talking to people, so you can come talk to us too.
Yes, thank you. Yeah, and then you also mentioned something that was very great, which was, support can be activity groups, right? You find common interests with other individuals. This is a great way to beat isolation, start to make friends. Isolation creeps in when we're adults, everyone. So, and it's really hard to make adult friends, FYI, right? So, I just wanted to mention that. So, I want to open up to questions. We have a couple minutes for that. Yeah. So if anyone has any, please raise your hand or drop them in the chat, and Courtney's gonna run around again, and Caitlin will take care of the chat. Anyone have any questions? What thoughts?
I have one for the group. Did anyone feel, when we were looking at like what phase of burnout you may have been in, did anyone feel like sometimes they straddle one and the other? Okay, that makes me feel so much better.
Yes.
Thank you. I
Yeah.
just need to know, because I was like,
Yeah.
sometimes I feel like I'm over here, but other times I feel like on this side of the fence.
Yeah.
So, okay. Does that mean anything?
It means that phases is probably not the right word to describe it, or the visual isn't great, because it's really non-linear, and you could kind of bounce back and forth depending on what's happening, right? So they don't have to be so concrete and pronounced, or frankly, necessarily go in that order of 1 and 2. So you're not weird if that's what's happening to you.
We like that.
Yeah,
Okay, we've got a question.
yeah, please.
Well, this one is more like a thought. It was just kind of going on a variation of the starting with the smallest building block. Is, I think also sometimes I just think of one thing a day towards the goal. So even if something feels more doable one day that's different from the other, that
Yes.
doesn't mean that you've messed up the building blocks or anything. You're still building up towards that.
Yeah, I love that. The one thing.
And then
Yes.
what slide was it that you wanted to see, Shelley? The first slide?
The very first. Oh.
This is going to be available
Yes.
on our YouTube channel. So, yes, and yes, we can send it out to attendees. So you all will get this, and then it will be available on our YouTube YouTube channel. Was it this
Yes.
slide?
And, yes, and I'll show you a slide with my contact information. You all are welcome to ask questions, thoughts that come up after, insights, anything, I'm here. So please do feel free to reach out. I'm gonna move it now, so you can see. I'm only an email or a chat away.
So I don't have a question, but I have thoughts.
Yeah.
Lots of them. But what I was just gonna say is on your phone, you have an app, the App Store, right? And so there are different apps that you can get for free. And so one that I have is called Motivation. And what it does is you can do it every hour, you can do it every other hour. And it'll come up and it'll have motivational sayings. And so like, I'll look, don't always have my phone on me, but I'll look. And then I'll have like notifications of different things. And so like, I have a motivation right now that says breathe. Or you can scroll through some that says, do not give up, the beginning is always the hardest. And so it's just like little reminders so that if you have a hard time at like, if you're having a moment, maybe you can go on your phone and read it, or it's all.
Yes. Yes,
Thank you for sharing.
that's great. Yeah, thank you for sharing.
On that note, there is another website that I use pretty frequently. It's called actionforhappiness.org. And they actually have a calendar every month that, you know, I think this month is optimistic October, I think. So every day they'll have like self-care September, and there's all kinds of nice catchy phrases for each month. And every day gives you either something to do or a nice reminder, you know, go walk today, or just remember you're enough today, or, you know, there's a lot of great sayings. So I've been sharing it with my workmates and, you know, and my wife also, and, you know, so I just wanted to share with everybody here. It's just one word, actionforhappiness.org. Yeah.
Cool. Yeah, thanks for sharing. Yeah, sometimes we just need the reminder, you know? I like to, you know, we were talking about on that first action we were taking, where we were giving ourselves something a little more compassionate to say to ourselves. I actually have like little post-its, you know, that I'll put in places because I sometimes just need the visual reminder. That can be helpful too. Yeah. Ooh, question. Oh.
Bought you first and then run to you, except I gotta squeeze through places first.
Hi, do you have any advice for those who are looking for purpose outside of work, more building their self-worth, their identity outside of work?
Oh, that is such a great question. Yes. So my advice would be start experimenting. Experiment. Think about it. Just try to think about everything like an experiment. You know, you can take classes, you can join groups, you can find meetups. And you don't need to be, you know, married or wed to one thing. Try to frame it like, you know, I'm a kid who was like playing, you know, with different toys and meeting new people, and you're just trying to figure out what, if anything, sticks. And I would say, are there causes and things that are important to you? That is something else to explore. Because if there are causes outside of work that are meaningful to you, you know, not only is it a good place to meet other people and connect with other people, which helps with our self-worth, you get to work on something that's important to you. So yeah, I would say explore and experiment. It's just kind of like dabble in things and try to think of that like you were a kid, and then look for the things that are meaningful to you.
And just so you're aware, we are going to explore and experiment with starting a volunteer group or opportunity for faculty and staff. So be on the lookout for that in the spring semester, because we're hoping to get that off the ground too. Because I also have the same question of like, I really want to give my time and energy elsewhere and volunteer or get involved, but I have no idea where to start. And so just that thought kind of sparked this interest that maybe other people have a similar thought. So hopefully we can get together and find a good cause.
Thank you. Is that it? Anyone else? One last person? No? Well, I just want to thank you all for taking your time and energy to learn about burnout, and I'm truly only, you know, a message away, so I'm just very, very happy to be here and appreciative of you listening and welcoming me, and, you know, please do reach out if you need anything.